Welcome to Facts Radio, your journey through history begins here. This is the story of power, legacy, and the making of a nation. Behold, the United States of America. The story of men who carried the weight of democracy on their shoulders, one decision, one crisis, one dream at a time. From a fragile union of 13 colonies to the world's most influential republic, the American presidency became more than a title, it became a symbol. Of vision. Of courage. Of the struggle between ideals and reality. In 1789, the experiment began. A nation, barely born, placed its fate in the hands of one man, and hoped the idea of liberty could survive leadership itself. George Washington, President of the United States from 1789 to 1797. He was not just the first president, he was the precedent. George Washington, the reluctant leader who turned victory into restraint. A general who won independence and then walked away from power, twice. In office, he set the standards, a cabinet of advisers, a peaceful transfer of power, neutrality in foreign wars. He could have been a king, instead, he chose to be a servant of the Republic. He left with one warning: beware of faction and foreign entanglement. 2 centuries later, his farewell still echoes as a reminder of how fragile freedom can be. John Adams, President of the United States from 1797 to 1801. A Federalist who faced the nation's first storms of division. The firebrand of independence, turned statesman of restraint. John Adams defended law and order even when revolution burned around him. As president, he faced the young nation's first great test, a quasi-war with France, domestic division, and the controversial Alien and Sedition Acts. He lost re-election, but preserved peace when war seemed inevitable. He died on July 4, 1826, the same day as his rival and friend, Thomas Jefferson. Their lives, and their deaths, mark the poetry of the American experiment. Thomas Jefferson, President from 1801 to 1809. A democratic Republican visionary who expanded the young republic's reach. A philosopher of liberty and a man of contradictions. Thomas Jefferson penned the words "all men are created equal," yet lived in a world built on slavery. As president, he doubled the size of the nation with the Louisiana Purchase, sent explorers westward, and imagined an America of farmers and free thinkers. But his embargo on trade crippled the economy and tested patience. Still, Jefferson's vision of individual freedom became the heartbeat of American identity, imperfect, but enduring. James Madison, President from 1809 to 1817. A Democratic Republican scholar who defended the Constitution in wartime. The father of the Constitution became the guardian of a young republic at war. Under James Madison, America faced its first full-scale invasion, the War of 1812. British troops burned Washington, D.C., but the nation held together. From the ashes rose a new symbol, the Star-Spangled Banner. Madison proved that the Constitution could endure even in flames. His quiet intellect forged the structure of American governance, and his resolve ensured it would survive its first real test. James Monroe, President from 1817 to 1825. A Democratic Republican leader guiding the nation into an era of unity and growth. With Monroe came a sense of calm, the era of good feelings. The wounds of war had begun to heal. The economy thrived. The borders expanded. His Monroe Doctrine warned Europe, the Western Hemisphere was no longer open to old empires. He toured the country as a unifying figure, the last of the founding generation to serve. Under his leadership, the nation felt, for the first time, truly American. But just beneath the optimism lay questions that would soon divide it again, questions of slavery, industry, and the meaning of freedom. The founders had built the stage. Now came those who would struggle to preserve it, men of conflict and conviction, as America grew, divided, and searched for its soul. John Quincy Adams, President of the United States from 1825 to 1829. A national Republican and son of a founder who carried the weight of legacy. He entered the White House through a contested election decided in the House of Representatives, a shadow that followed him. Brilliant, principled, but politically isolated, Adams envisioned canals, universities, and scientific progress. Yet his intellect outpaced his era. After losing re-election, he returned to Congress, where his true legacy bloomed, a fearless opponent of slavery and defender of free speech until his final breath. Andrew Jackson, President from 1829 to 1837. A Democrat, a war hero, and a symbol of populist power. Jackson brought the frontier to Washington. To his followers, he was a champion of the common man; to his critics, a tyrant in a tailored coat. He destroyed the national bank, expanded presidential authority, and left a mixed legacy marked by the Trail of Tears. Under Jackson, democracy grew louder and more divided. Martin Van Buren, President from 1837 to 1841. A Democrat who inherited prosperity's collapse. The Panic of 1837 struck weeks after his inauguration, plunging the nation into depression. Skilled in politics but trapped by circumstance, Van Buren's calm intellect couldn't steady the storm. He left office with the economy in ruins, and a warning that even strong systems can stumble when built on fragile trust. William Henry Harrison, President in 1841. A Whig whose time in office lasted only 31 days. Elected as a hero of frontier battles, Harrison delivered the longest inaugural address in a cold March rain, and soon became the first president to die in office. His death sparked a constitutional question: could a vice president truly become president? John Tyler's answer would define succession forever. John Tyler, President from 1841 to 1845. A Whig in name but a man apart. Expelled from his own party, Tyler governed alone, vetoing bills and standing firm on states' rights. Yet his bold move to annex Texas changed the map and set the stage for conflict to come. He left the presidency isolated but unbowed, a preview of the stubborn independence that would shape later leaders. James K. Polk, President from 1845 to 1849. A Democrat driven by the dream of manifest destiny. Polk promised expansion and delivered. Texas joined the Union, Oregon's border was set, and the war with Mexico brought California and the Southwest. In 4 years, he redrew the nation's borders from ocean to ocean. He served one term by design, proof that ambition could coexist with discipline. Zachary Taylor, President from 1849 to 1850. A Whig and a soldier who found himself in politics almost by accident. A hero of the Mexican-American War, Taylor resisted sectional pressures and opposed the spread of slavery, even as a Southern slaveholder himself. His sudden death after only 16 months in office left the nation rudderless as the storm clouds of civil division gathered thicker. Millard Fillmore, President from 1850 to 1853. A Whig who sought compromise when the Union strained at the seams. He signed the Compromise of 1850, a temporary peace that admitted California as free but enforced the Fugitive Slave Act. Fillmore hoped moderation would save the Union. Instead, it deepened the moral fault lines between North and South. Franklin Pierce, President from 1853 to 1857. A Democrat whose charm could not mask the nation's growing unrest. Pierce championed expansion and signed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, allowing slavery to spread by local vote. Violence erupted in bleeding Kansas, and the hope of balance collapsed. His term, haunted by personal loss and national conflict, showed how compromise had become impossible. James Buchanan, President from 1857 to 1861. A Democrat paralyzed by crisis. He believed the Constitution barred him from stopping secession, and watched helplessly as states left the Union. When he handed power to his successor, the country stood on the brink of war. History remembers Buchanan not for action, but for silence when courage was needed most. Abraham Lincoln, President from 1861 to 1865. A Republican who rose from humble roots to save a nation. Elected as the country split apart, Lincoln faced the unimaginable Civil War. He preserved the Union, freed the enslaved, and redefined liberty itself. In his words, government of the people, by the people, for the people's gained eternal meaning. He fell to an assassin's bullet just days after victory, a martyr to the very ideals he defended. From the ashes of civil war came the challenge of rebuilding, a fractured land searching for justice, identity, and renewal. Next came the era of Reconstruction and expansion, when presidents would wrestle with unity, industry, and America's new place in a widening world. Andrew Johnson, President of the United States from 1865 to 1869. A Democrat who inherited Lincoln's impossible task. He rose from poverty to the presidency, sworn in after Lincoln's assassination. Johnson sought quick reconciliation with the South, but clashed with Congress over how freedom and justice should be rebuilt. His leniency angered the radical Republicans, his vetoes led to impeachment, the first in U.S. history. He survived by a single vote, but his presidency left the country divided over the meaning of Reconstruction and equality. Ulysses Grant, President from 1869 to 1877. A Republican general turned reluctant politician. The hero of Appomattox sought peace through strength. He fought for civil rights, crushed the Ku Klux Klan, and upheld the promise of freedom for the formerly enslaved. But corruption in his administration and a faltering economy scarred his legacy. Still, Grant's calm resolve embodied a simple truth, that integrity, not politics, defines victory. Rutherford Hayes, President from 1877 to 1881. A Republican who ended Reconstruction and restored fragile order. He came to power through the most disputed election in U.S. history. His compromise, removing federal troops from the South, ended Reconstruction but abandoned black citizens to a century of segregation. Hayes sought honesty in government and unity in spirit, but the cost of peace was heavy and long-lasting. James Garfield, President in 1881. A Republican scholar and Civil War veteran. Garfield dreamed of reforming the spoils system and healing divisions within his party. But just months after taking office, he was shot by a disgruntled office seeker. His lingering death shocked the nation and sparked a movement for civil service reform, born from tragedy. Chester Arthur, President from 1881 to 1885. A Republican who surprised his critics. Known once as a machine politician, Arthur transformed in office. He signed the Pendleton Act, ending much of the corrupt patronage that had poisoned politics. Elegant and reserved, he restored dignity to the presidency, proving that redemption could emerge from scandal's shadow. Grover Cleveland, President from 1885 to 1889 and again from 1893 to 1897. A Democrat of principle and persistence. The only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms, Cleveland stood for honesty, limited government, and fiscal discipline. He vetoed hundreds of bills, challenged corporate power, and earned respect for doing what he believed was right, not what was popular. In an age of corruption, his integrity shone quietly, like a steady flame. Benjamin Harrison, President from 1889 to 1893. A Republican and grandson of a president, governing in an age of industrial might. Harrison strengthened the Navy, admitted 6 new states, and signed the Sherman Antitrust Act, America's first step against monopolies. But high tariffs and economic unease cost him re-election. He left with dignity, a bridge between old traditions and the coming modern era. William McKinley, President from 1897 to 1901. A Republican who led America into the modern age. Under William McKinley, prosperity returned and the United States emerged as a global power. Victory in the Spanish-American War brought new territories, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. But expansion came with questions of empire and morality. In 1901, an assassin's bullet cut his life short, and a new, energetic leader would soon redefine what a president could be. The frontier had been tamed. The nation industrialized, urbanized, and looked outward to the world. The next generation of presidents would shape a modern America, driven by reform, war, and the rise of global influence. Theodore Roosevelt, President of the United States from 1901 to 1909. A Republican who charged into history with boundless energy. He was the youngest to hold the office, bold, restless, and determined to make the presidency the center of action. He broke monopolies, championed conservation, and declared America's right to shape the world stage with the Roosevelt corollary. He invited the nation to live the strenuous life, and in doing so, transformed the White House into a force of personality and power. William Howard Taft, President from 1909 to 1913. a Republican and Roosevelt's chosen successor, but a reluctant warrior in politics. A scholar and judge at heart, Taft sought balance, not bravado. He expanded antitrust prosecutions and reformed the civil service, but his cautious temperament clashed with Roosevelt's zeal. Their friendship turned to rivalry, splitting the Republican Party and paving the way for a new kind of leader. Woodrow Wilson, president from 1913 to 1921. A Democrat and idealist who led America through World War I. A former professor turned statesman, Wilson championed progressivism at home, banking reform, income tax, women's suffrage, and moral diplomacy abroad. He dreamed of a world safe for democracy and envisioned the League of Nations. But war and stroke left him broken, his ideals ahead of his time. The peace he sought became the struggle of the next century. Warren Harding, president from 1921 to 1923. A Republican promising a return to normalcy. After the turmoil of war, Harding offered calm and presided over a booming economy. But scandal consumed his administration. The Teapot Dome affair tainted his name, though Harding himself never lived to see the full disgrace. He died in office, leaving Americans to wonder whether good intentions could survive bad company. Calvin Coolidge, president from 1923 to 1929. A Republican known for silence and restraint. Silent Cal believed government should interfere little and trust the power of enterprise. Under his watch, industry soared, cities grew, and optimism filled the air. He said little, but his era spoke loudly, the Roaring Twenties, a time of glitter and growing imbalance before the fall. Herbert Hoover, president from 1929 to 1933. A Republican and self-made man who faced the nation's darkest hour. The Great Depression struck months after his inauguration. A humanitarian by nature, Hoover believed voluntary effort could cure crisis, but the despair was too deep. His policies failed to stop the collapse, and the once celebrated engineer became a symbol of helpless leadership in a shattered economy. Franklin Roosevelt, president from 1933 to 1945. A Democrat who led America through depression and war. Paralyzed from the waist down, he rose to unmatched power and connection with the people. Through the New Deal, he rebuilt faith in democracy. Through World War II, he led the fight for freedom itself. His fireside voice steadied a nation, his leadership reshaped the world. When he died in office, he left a nation transformed, and a legacy that defined the modern presidency. Harry Truman, president from 1945 to 1953. A Democrat thrust into history's most perilous moment. He made the decision to end World War II, authorizing atomic bombs that changed humanity forever. He rebuilt Europe through the Marshall Plan, forged NATO, and stood firm in the first great struggle of the Cold War. "Give 'em hell, Harry," they said, and he did, guided by plain-spoken courage and unshakable duty. Dwight Eisenhower, president from 1953 to 1961. A Republican general who brought calm to a turbulent age. The hero of D-Day became the steady hand of peace. Eisenhower balanced strength with restraint, built highways that united the continent, and warned of the military-industrial complex. He left behind not fanfare, but quiet stability, proof that discipline and moderation can be the greatest forms of power. From the ashes of global war, America entered a new era, one of confrontation, confidence, and change. The next generation of presidents would navigate civil rights, nuclear tensions, and the shifting tides of a restless world. John Kennedy, President of the United States from 1961 to 1963. A Democrat whose youth and vision inspired a generation. He spoke of a new frontier, calling Americans to service, exploration, and sacrifice. In a world divided by nuclear fear, Kennedy faced the Cuban Missile Crisis, 13 days that nearly ended civilization. He launched the race to the moon, fought for civil rights, and symbolized the hope of renewal. But in Dallas, that hope was shattered by an assassin's bullet, and America's innocence fell with him. Lyndon Johnson, president from 1963 to 1969. A Democrat of immense will who sought to build a great society. He carried Kennedy's torch forward, passing the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and Medicare, laws that reshaped American life. But Vietnam became his undoing. The war divided the nation, overshadowing his triumphs at home. Johnson's presidency remains one of contradictions, towering progress in justice, and devastating conflict abroad. Richard Nixon, president from 1969 to 1974. A Republican strategist who reached great heights and fell to great scandal. He opened China to the world, pursued détente with the Soviet Union, and ended U.S. involvement in Vietnam. Yet paranoia and secrecy consumed his administration. The Watergate scandal revealed abuses of power that shook the nation's trust. When he resigned, he became the first president to do so, proof that even the highest office is not above the law. Gerald Ford, president from 1974 to 1977. A Republican who never sought the presidency yet bore its burden with calm. He stepped into office after Nixon's fall, vowing honesty and healing. Ford pardoned his predecessor, believing the nation needed closure more than vengeance, a decision that cost him politically, but earned history's respect. He steadied the ship of state when faith in government was at its lowest ebb. Jimmy Carter, president from 1977 to 1981. A Democrat and a man of faith who brought morality back to politics. He championed human rights, brokered peace between Egypt and Israel, and spoke with humility to a weary nation. But inflation, energy crises, and the Iran hostage ordeal defined his term. Carter left office unpopular, yet history later honored him as a peacemaker, humanitarian, and symbol of integrity beyond politics. Ronald Reagan, president from 1981 to 1989. A Republican communicator who reignited America's confidence. The former actor-turned-governor brought optimism to an era of doubt. He revived the economy through tax cuts and deregulation, declared mourning in America, and stood firm against the Soviet Union. His challenge, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, became the echo of an age. Reagan left office with the Cold War waning and a belief that American strength could change the world. The Cold War was ending, and the world was transforming again. Globalization, technology, and new conflicts reshaped the presidency into something both powerful and constrained. The next era would test leadership in peace as much as in war. George Herbert Walker Bush, President of the United States from 1989 to 1993. A Republican statesman who guided America through the end of an era. A World War II veteran and former CIA director, Bush oversaw the peaceful end of the Cold War and the fall of the Berlin Wall. He led a coalition to victory in the Gulf War, proving diplomacy and strength could coexist. At home, recession struck, and promises unmet cost him re-election. Yet history remembers him as a steady hand, the last of a generation that placed duty above politics. Bill Clinton, president from 1993 to 2001. A Democrat who presided over prosperity and controversy. He modernized the economy, balanced the budget, and championed technology's rise in a new global age. His charisma reshaped the presidency for the television era, but scandal and impeachment tested his legacy. Clinton left office with high approval and a divided nation, proof that brilliance and flaw often share the same stage. George Walker Bush, president from 2001 to 2009. A Republican who faced the unthinkable on a clear September morning. The attacks of September 11, 2001, defined his presidency. He launched the war on terror, toppled regimes in Afghanistan and Iraq, and sought to protect freedom in a fearful world. At home, unity gave way to fatigue and division. Bush's era became a story of resilience and reckoning, of leadership under fire in a changed America. Barack Obama, president from 2009 to 2017. A Democrat and the nation's first African-American president. His election marked a milestone in the American story, a symbol of progress and possibility. He steered the country through the Great Recession, reformed healthcare, and ordered the mission that killed Osama bin Laden. With calm resolve, he restored diplomacy and dignity to a shaken world stage. Obama's presidency reminded the nation that hope itself can be a form of leadership. Donald J. Trump, president from 2017 to 2021. A Republican businessman and outsider who shattered convention. He redefined political communication, challenged institutions, and spoke directly to discontented Americans. His policies spurred economic growth and reshaped trade, but his rhetoric deepened polarization. The pandemic, protests, and a contested election marked a turbulent end. Loved and loathed in equal measure, Trump's era reflected a nation at war with itself over identity and truth. Joe Biden, president from 2021 to 2025. A Democrat seeking unity in a fractured age. A veteran of decades in public service, Biden faced crises both familiar and new, a pandemic's aftermath, economic recovery, and renewed global conflict. He restored alliances abroad and pursued investment at home, framing his leadership as empathy and endurance over spectacle. In an era of noise, he preached steadiness. In division, he sought decency. His presidency remains a work in progress, a bridge between generations in America's ongoing experiment with itself. Donald J. Trump, president once again from 2025 onward. A Republican returning to unfinished battles. After 4 years out of power, Trump reclaimed the presidency, a rare second non-consecutive term in American history. His return signaled both the deep divisions and enduring influence of his movement, as the nation faced new questions about democracy, accountability, and identity in the 21st century. Closing reflection. For over 2 centuries, the American presidency has mirrored the nation it leads, its ideals, its contradictions, its courage, and its constant change. From Washington's humility to Lincoln's sacrifice, from Roosevelt's strength to Kennedy's vision, from Reagan's optimism to Obama's hope, each carried the same invisible burden: to keep the promise of democracy alive. Power has changed, but its test remains the same: to govern not by fear, but by faith, not by division, but by duty. Each man left behind more than policies, he left a moment in time, a reflection of what America was, and what it dreamed to be. Through wars and peace, through prosperity and crisis, through progress and pain, the thread of leadership has endured. Because the presidency, at its heart, is not about one person. It's about all of us, the citizens whose voices shape its power and purpose. And as history continues to unfold, new leaders will rise, carrying the same challenge that began in 1789, to serve the people, and to preserve the idea that freedom, though imperfect, is worth every struggle. This has been the American President's Power, Legacy, and the Making of a Nation. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you made it this far, you're the reason we can keep going. Please subscribe and help us continue sharing these stories with the world.